afternoon. This is Phil from Phil's podcast, coming to you live from Precise Auto Service, located here in Kensington, Maryland. And we'd like to introduce ourselves to you. I have my partner here, Andy, and we're going to give you a lot of background on how I wound up in Kensington almost 20 years ago, uh, which was not something I had on my agenda at the time. And in fact, I wasn't in the auto repair business at that time. And a situation drew me to Kensington through a source of mine that heard of this individual that purchased this property with a business located right here in Kensington. It was a Getty gas station. And after about 7, 8 phone calls, I don't like to hear of anyone being taken advantage of, but this individual purchased this property along with the business, spent quite a bit of money, and then once he went to settlement, next day he realized he had no customers. And that was due to an individual that sold it to him who had been operating that business off his cell phone. So anyway, I wound up here to meet this gentleman, and saw that he was drowning, and I felt that I could help him out, and at the same time it was going to help me in the long run, I figured, as far as because I like to help people. And I just basically told him that one, I was willing to come and run his business. I would build it. A year and a half, 2 years later, he'd probably be able to sell it, and then I was going to depart Kensington and go my way, and he was going to go his. Well, to make a long story short, that did not happen. And the first thing I thought to myself when the next morning when I went to open up the business, and I always arrive early, I stood in those bays and I wondered where the customers were going and where were the employees going. So I knew then I had to stay in Kensington. And I've been very successful with the business, and my repair shop is different than any other repair shop that I've ever known of. And I try to do my best on a daily basis to provide the best service, quality, and price. And that gives you a little bit of background on me, and I will be talking to you in a few minutes, and I'm going to turn you over to Andy.
Well, I'm Andy, and I've known Phil ever since he's been at the Getty. I came to know Phil. I'm a member of the Kensington Volunteer Fire Department, and I used to go to Tom Logan, and Tom Logan got out of the business. Many of you probably know Tom Logan. He did wonderful work, but left the business, and so I was looking for a reputable repair shop, and our administrator at the fire department, Mike Kelly, who's now a division chief with the Montgomery County Fire and Rescue Service, referred me over to Phil, and I went over and talked to him, and I've been a customer ever since, and I've enjoyed the relationship. Our relationship has grown beyond just being a customer to being a friend. We have socialized together, gone to dinner with our spouses and so forth, and we continue to grow together as friends and business associates. And here we are in this venture, working together on this, and we hope to impart a number of life's lessons that we've learned over the course of time collectively together.
I'm surprised that you didn't tell them about that vehicle that I had stolen.
Well, sometimes things are better left unsaid. I had a van that was in for repair. I have since gotten rid of that van, but nonetheless, it was in repair at the Getty gas station when Phil was there. And one day I got a call from Phil, and he advised me that my van had been stolen, but he had gotten it back. And so years later, we were standing out in front of his current location, which is Precise Auto Service in Kensington on Pliers Mill Road, just down the street from the Getty. And he was telling another customer that he'd only had one car stolen off the lot. And he turned to me and he said, "Did you know that?" And I said, "Yes, I knew that was my van." And so it's been sort of part of the folklore of the Precise Auto Service business. And of course, since we brought that up, Phil, we're still together. So obviously it didn't have that much of an impact on me. It wasn't your fault.
No, it didn't have no impact on you, but in fact, it had a big effect on me for years. Because, I think back to that day when I showed up to open up a business, and there was one particular vehicle that was missing. And then I realized it was a customer's vehicle and who it was, and I thought, man, how am I going to explain this to my customer? And at that time, he was a fairly new customer. But
Yes.
anyway, yeah. With that being said, there have been a lot of things that has transpired through the years with the business here in Kensington, and a lot of things, day to day. But I have built a strong customer base, loyal customers, and to give you an idea of description of the operation is we turn anywhere from 200 to 300 cars a month, and these are steady, loyal customers. And I've heard through the years when I was younger that people experienced, shop owners experienced children becoming customers. And I've had a lot of wonderful experiences with that, and the children that were 6, 7 years old then, and some of them younger, are now customers. So I'm grateful that I wound up here in Kensington, and I enjoy what I do, but I've had a lot of turmoil through my life. And as you know, Andy, that in 2010 I was educated about doctors when my wife was misdiagnosed, and unfortunately, we thought we were dealing with experts, and then come to find out later, no, we were not, and unfortunately, I lost her 6 years later. So that's the topic that we're going to go into at some point, but there's a lot of other topics that we want to discuss and share with our listeners, and hopefully for years to come.
Yeah, well, before we go beyond that for just 1 minute, navigating the medical profession in terms of care for a loved one is very difficult, and I experienced some of the similar circumstances that you did with your wife, with my mother. And what I have found is you cannot put it on autopilot. You have to manage and advocate for your loved one, and that's the key to a successful medical outcome.
That's correct. But in my position at that point in time, medical issues had not been a personal factor as far as my children or my wife. And yes, with siblings, yes, but not to the degree where when my wife became ill, she thought it was a bug, and then the doctors thought it was an infection, and they couldn't diagnose her. And then later, come find out she was walking around for 3.5 weeks with a ruptured appendix. So therefore, we had no knowledge, and I thought then that we were dealing with the experts as well as my wife. But with that being said, we'll move on to a different topic.
Well, I don't mean to cut you off, but let's go back to the topic of family members. And I'm living proof of that scenario you described as well. And I know we'll talk more about that at some point, but my children, who are all adults now,
Yes.
They bring their cars in here and have them repaired, and put new tires on, oil changes, other significant repairs. My son had a problem recently with his catalytic converter and the piping for that, and your team of experts took care of that.
Yes.
We originally thought it was a warranty item that could be handled at the dealership. We took it over there. They indicated that it was not a warranty item, but were unable to diagnose what the problem was. And we brought it back to you, and you were able to figure it out very quickly, and he was on his way. And he lives in Ohio, so he had to get back to work, and you put him on the road pretty quickly after that. So that's a testament to generational customers.
Very true. And that's why we're here, and that's how I came up with the name Precise. If you're going to provide a service, I don't care what type of product it is, whether it's a restaurant, any type of service where you're dealing with people, to meet their needs, you have to be the best. And my philosophy always, through my entire adulthood, if I'm going to do something, I want to be the best at what I'm involved in.
And that makes perfect sense. And that, of course, is the reason that anybody who's listening, who is a customer, knows that about your way of life here at Precise Auto.
Yes, and there are a lot of other topics that we're going to cover during our podcast, and hopefully educate a lot of our listeners that they don't endure the same thing that we've had to endure. I always refer to it as school of hard knocks.
Yeah, well, there's plenty of hard knocks out there, and we're in turbulent times, and people are looking for a port in a storm during these times. And one of the things that is important to people who own cars is making sure that they're well maintained, run right, and cared for properly by people who know what they're doing. And that's certainly the case here at Precise Auto.
And I appreciate you saying that. While we're on the topic of vehicles, automobiles, I want to just put it out there about the shortage on parts, the very shortage on all petroleum products. When we got into the COVID, I wasn't very concerned about COVID once I heard that I was considered an essential business. And we went through COVID, and it was it was like a hiccup. We didn't slow down that much. In fact, I had some record months. But now, I had a meeting about 3 weeks back with one of my bigger part suppliers, and they informed me about the shortage of parts, along with the petroleum products. And the last 2 weeks, I've been trying to stockpile on the oil, brakes, so on and so forth, because I got thinking about that. If I can't get a set of brakes for a person's car, how are they going to get to work? If they need an oil change in the car, how are they going to keep driving it? Because oil breaks down. So I just want to put this out there and make every listener aware of this. And I don't know how long of a ride we're in for, but I was told by my supplier that it's going to be all the way into 2023. So we're looking at a whole year that I'm anticipating this.
Well, I think the point you're making is, in addition to enlightening folks out in the field there, if you will, about the circumstances in the marketplace, is you're preparing for a continuity of operations. You have a continuity of operations plan here, basically, that you're attempting to stockpile items that are typically used by the team here.
That's correct.
And make sure that your business is in a position to continue to provide that level of service that customers are used to, even though there are, at this point, issues in acquiring supplies and equipment.
That's correct. And the downtime on a repair job, to do a repair on the vehicles now, used to be you could get them done in a day. Now with the parts situation, it can be anywhere from 2 to 5 days and even longer. Another example, I went to order a certain particular tire for one of my customers last week, and I was told there's 3 brands that they're a year out on these particular brands. So that tells me that also we're going to have a serious problem with getting tires. So I'm trying to put a safety net in place, but it's impossible to provide all these certain different components that are needed for all these different type vehicles.
Well, and I think in addition to the issues that you raised specific to auto repair, parts, supplies, and that sort of thing, listeners should think about what their plan is in their home for things that they need.
Exactly.
And so what you've done here, as we talked about a few minutes ago, and as I mentioned early on in our introduction, that I'm associated with the fire department, you have to have a plan.
Right.
A plan to protect yourself, a plan to make sure that your home is safe, a plan to make sure that you have supplies and equipment in your house to sustain you should something happen that prevents you from being able to acquire those things that you need. Of course, there's a number of websites out there that listeners can go to look at how they can plan for circumstances that are fairly unforeseen.
Right, that's true. and that's exactly what we're trying to do. Uh, and then uh, other areas that we will be discussing at some point would be like uh, what happens to a business owner once he's in business. You know, with all the turmoils up and down I've had, especially in the last 6, 7 years, 8 years really. Uh, Managers, employees, uh, even accountants. I've had up and downs with that. In fact, I was almost out of business back in 2013. So that's another area. Anyone that's in business or is considering going in business, no matter what type of business it is, they have to be able to find some ways to be protected. And I really never thought about that, and I never experienced what I went through for 6 years. So it caught me sleeping, and like I stated a minute ago, it just about put me out of business.
Well, and I watched that happen as you were caring for your dear wife. How some of the employees that you've had over the years, and the other day when we were preparing to launch this podcast, we talked about the numbers of employees that you've had, and it's in the hundreds. And in addition to having some really good people that have worked for you over the years, you've had some what I would call disreputable people as well. And I'm sure we're going to talk more about that in future podcasts. But you have miraculously recovered from some pretty serious derelictions of employees over the years.
Yes, that's true. And to this day, the employees, they're getting hard to even be able to keep the staff that you need because of the people not wanting to work. And I've been looking for, give you an example, mechanics hard for the last 3 years, and prior to that I saw a slowdown about 5 to 6 years prior to that. But now I've been seeking for the last 5 months a technician that I've only had two to even come in and apply.
Well, that's a really good point. And I think anybody who's listening out here who knows of a mechanic or technician, people in the auto repair business, be aware that Phil is looking for team members, and they should refer them over here to Phil's Precise Auto in Kensington, and work to try to support this business by way of adding to the good and qualified team members here.
Yes, and I will state that I had 3 employees that were with me 13 and a half years, and I learned after the fact there is no such thing as loyalty, because I lost those 3 employees that were with me 13 and a half years due to a manager I had in here when I wasn't able to even walk in the door. And that was that eight months period where I could not walk in. But I did learn from that situation. There was no such thing as loyalty when it came to employees at that time, and no matter how they were treated. And they were the lady I had in the office was as honest as she could be, and she could run this business. But there again, when I wasn't here for the 8 months, she decided to leave due to a manager.
And that's a problem, and that's a really good point. It's a key to how a business runs. Quite frankly, Phil, I've had conversations with you offline on a number of occasions where when you've had managers of disrepute, if you will, in here then that were not functioning properly, they had an adverse effect on the business, and as soon as you returned, the business picked back up again. It was clear that during those times, the lot was empty of cars a lot of days, and as soon as you returned, the lot was filled. Like I've told you before, it does my heart good when I pull around the corner and see cars from the door to the street, and it's a pretty good clip between the front door of your shop to the street side at Pliers Mill Road. So, and clearly that happens on days when you're here, and when you're here for a prolonged period of time, like you have been since you've gotten through some of the crisis in your personal life.
Yes. I'm trying to go back to when end of 2017. In fact, when I had this manager and the crew, and I was trying to only come in like 2-3 days a week, and I knew there were issues, but I just wasn't back into this business as far as my head due to what I'd been through, and be quite honest, I was trying to do what I promised my wife, only work 2 to 3, maybe 3 days a week, and then I had this letter come in from Costco, and I thought it was junk mail, and I was going to throw it away, and I just threw it over on the side of my desk, and went on back, left, and come back the following week, and I was going back through my mail, and I thought, let me pick that envelope up, and I was getting ready to throw it away again. And I thought, well, let me see what they're trying to sell me, because I'm a member of Costco, but not through the business. And then when I opened it up and read it, I realized they were soliciting me to become a Costco preferred shop. So I reached out to Costco and had a conversation with him, and he knew exactly where I was, knew my reputation, and said he was based in Jacksonville, Florida, and this was on Wednesday afternoon. And he told me that his name was Bill, in fact, told me that he could be in my business Friday, 1 o'clock, and he did. He showed up at 1. He was here the rest of the afternoon and gave me a packet and told me if I wanted to fill it out, become a Costco preferred shop, just get the documents back to him, and he'd get me up and running. So I went on back down to my house in Smith Mountain Lake, and still wasn't really concerned about Costco or really the business. And then I got to thinking about it, and I thought, well, if I'm going to make a commitment, then I've got to make sure this shop is right. And I got back in here, and the questions that I had for my manager for those months, I was at the computer and I was getting my answers. And when I came back in, that was in November of 2017. Within a week, I was left with one mechanic and a manager. And before that week was out, I was just myself, my technician, and one helper. I had cleaned everybody out of here, and Costco is the one that actually got me in here, because if it hadn't been for that letter, taking time to open that letter instead of just throwing the trash, and then meeting with Bill, and the way I walk through life, if I'm gonna do something, I want to be the best at what I do.
Well, that's clear, and certainly there have been a number of occasions where people have come to the shop and they've made the statement, "I've been present here. I'm so glad you're back. This place runs great when you're here." Some of the people that you've had in the past haven't been forthright and honest. And again, you've had hundreds of employees, and the vast majority of them have been tremendous team members to you. But there have been some that have created circumstances that have been detrimental to the well-being of your business, and you've done a good job navigating that minefield to keep things afloat here and to provide this service to the people of the area, particularly Kensington, but for that matter, there are lots of customers who pass many shops in order to get here. I remember I worked for a large grocery chain years ago, and the store manager and I were talking one day, and he said, Andy, a lot of customers who come here pass other grocery stores to get here, and they come here because of good customer service, quality product, and sufficient supply on the shelves, so that when they come, it's not out of stock. And he took great pride in that, and I've always took a big lesson from him on that, just as I have taken a big lesson from you over the last nearly 20 years that we've known each other.
Yes, and speaking of Bill being back, when I got back in here, had a few customers come in at different times within about, I'd say say 6 weeks, and I had 3 customers that came in and looked at they looked at me like, "Is that you, Phil?" I looked at them. I looked at them and I laughed. I said, "Yeah, it's me." And they said, "Phil, I was told that when I was there last time that you sold your business." I said, "No, I didn't sell my business." I said, "Who told you that?" "Why, whoever you had as manager." So I heard this 3 different times, and I hadn't really. I figured, well, just talk, whatever. But I had this other gentleman come in, had been a customer for years, and he did look like he was looking at a ghost. And I said, "John," I said, "what's the matter?" He says, "Phil." He says, "You're really here?" I said, "Sure, I'm here. Why not?" He says, "Phil, I come in here, and your manager told me you sold the business." And he said, John said, "Well, that's Phil's truck over there, isn't it?" He said, "Yes." He said, "Well, Phil sold the truck with the business." So once he left, and I got thinking about that, and I thought now, and I had noticed a slowdown in my customers, hadn't seen certain customers. And I know a general timeline when a customer's coming in for an oil change or whatever, regular service. And I noticed that, there's certain people I hadn't seen. So I thought about that for about 2 hours after John left, and I thought, man, how am I going to get the word out to my customers that I'm here? And I thought about that, and I come up with this, I got to get a sign. So I called my sign man, Steve. He's located right here in Kensington. And I said, "Steve," I said, "I need a sign." He said, "Sure, Phil, what sign do you need?" And I told him I just need a small little sign, like a banner sign, that I can put on my front door that says Phil is back. And I said, "I need that as soon as possible." He said, "Well, that's no problem. I'll get it to you in the morning." Put that sign up. Next thing I know, my customers are all coming back up in here. And now, almost 3 years later, they don't even take the sign down. So that's another situation that I never thought that I was experienced, where I would be paying a manager to run my business, and he's trying to run it off, run me out of business.
Well, I think that proves a significant point, that you can't just put your business on autopilot, even if you have what you think are good managers. Everybody needs a little guidance sometimes. And one of the things that I've noticed over the years with your customers is that not only do they want good quality auto care, but they confide in you. They tell you their stories. They share their life's traumas with you. And so you're more than just a shop owner. You're a counselor, a therapist. I know you're not a licensed clinical social worker or a psychiatrist or anything like that, but you're just an open ear to those who are in need to talk about things with you, and they do share with you.
Yeah, I got a customer that he has his patients come in and lay down on the couch, and he's been here quite a few times, and I'll look at him and I'll say, "Jim, I think I need to come lay on your couch. I need some advice, some help, whatever." And we get a good laugh out of that. But yeah, I've met a lot of interesting people here: judges, doctors, lawyers, customers that are doctors, lawyers. And back when my situation, my world went upside down, people would tell me, especially the doctors and the lawyers, that he says, "Phil, do you know how many misdiagnosed cases there are in the United States on a yearly basis?" I said, "No." He said, "There's over 300,000 a year." I said, "Really?" And he said, "Yes." So I've learned a lot of things from different people, have become friends. My attorney that's been with me since '06, I lost the attorney I had back then. He came to me one day and he says, "Phil," he says, "I can't be your attorney no more." I said, "Jim, what do you mean you can't be my attorney no more?" He said, the governor has appointed me to be a judge. And I said, Jim, what am I going to do for an attorney? He said, oh, Phil, don't worry about it. He says, I got you an attorney. He says his name is Jim Parsons. And he's still my attorney today, but we're also friends. And I just enjoy what I do here. And a lot of people ask me, they say, Phil, you're going to retire? I don't look to retire because I like what I do. But at some point, I do know and realize that I've got to slow down. But I also enjoy the conversations I have with my customers, and when we get talking and we get into different topics, and a lot of people would say, Phil, you need to come out of the podcast with the knowledge that you've got in different areas. And I said, well, I've been trying to write a book, and due to my schedule, the book's been put on the back burner. And this is what led me to come out with a podcast, because I do have a lot of topics. And as we go through these sessions, we're going to try to help as many listeners as possible and their friends, family, and so on and so forth.
Yeah, well, I think that's a good segue to a conclusion for today. And like you just said, we have a lot of topics that we're going to get into over the course of time. And quite frankly, Phil, I'm looking forward to being with you to go through this. It's a journey that we'll share together with whoever is listening out there. And hopefully they'll provide feedback to us. Certainly, they know where we are, so they can do that.
Exactly. And I'm looking for a long-term relationship on this podcast with you as well. And like you stated earlier, we've been friends more than just a customer. We've gone out to dinner and different things. We've had a lot of conversations. And I'm looking forward to doing this for years to come, as I stated earlier.
Yes. Well, we thank you for listening, and we will be back on the air shortly. We have not quite yet figured out what our schedule is, but stay tuned and go back frequently to see.